Ranger Cole Maddox had ridden the borders of Red Brush Canyon for nearly 15 years, long enough to know the land like the creases on his weathered hands. The dawn was just breaking when he began his patrol, painting the canyon walls with bands of rose and ember gold. A gentle wind carried the dusty scent of sagebrush, and for the first few hours, the world felt calm, almost peaceful. But peace rarely lasted long on the frontier. As Cole rounded a bend near the old creek bed, his horse, Dusty, stiffened beneath him. The animal's ears pricked forward, and he let out a low, uneasy grunt. Cole slowed him to a trot, scanning the terrain. Nothing seemed out of place at first, until he caught sight of movement to the left. 3 horses. 3 fully saddled riderless horses. They stood clustered near a dying mesquite tree, reins dragging in the dirt, flanks heaving as though they had been running hard for hours. Their coats were streaked with sweat and dust, and 2 had dark, dried patches of blood along the stirrups. Cole's heart sank. This wasn't normal. He dismounted, every instinct sharpened. The first horse, a chestnut mare, recognized him and nuzzled his shoulder. It belonged to Sam Dwyer, one of the young ranchers who lived on the South Ridge. The second horse, a bay stallion, was Sam's wife Maggie's. The third, a black gelding, belonged to their ranch hand, Tomas. 3 horses, 3 saddles, no riders. Cole checked the reins and saddles, noting the details like a man collecting puzzle pieces. There were no bullet holes, no torn leather, no sign of an ambush, only the blood, dark, dry, about a day old. Someone had been hurt, maybe more than one person, but the ground around the horses told a different story. There were no chaotic tracks, no sign of a scuffle, no drag marks leading away, nothing that looked like people jumping off, running, or being thrown. It was as if the riders had simply vanished. Cole circled the area, crouching low. That was when he saw a single mark in the dirt, at the edge of a dried puddle. He brushed away the loose sand with the back of his gloved hand and leaned closer. A-B-O-O-T-P-R-I-N-T. But not just any B-O-O-T-P-R-I-N-T. It was tiny, so small it could only belong to a child, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The heel was narrow, the toe short. It stood alone, slightly turned inward, with no adult prints near it. Cole frowned deeply. Sam and Maggie didn't have a child. Their ranch hands certainly didn't. So who did this print belong to? Where had the child come from? And more importantly, where were they now? As he scanned farther along the creek bed, he spotted another print, but this one was different, bigger, much bigger. The spacing was wider, the depth heavier, and the tread pattern. Cole crouched again, studying it closely. He recognized the pattern instantly. Boots worn by cavalry scouts during the war. The same pattern issued to men who now drifted through the frontier. Some honest, many dangerous. One boot print beside a child's could only mean trouble. A cold pressure formed in Cole's chest. Horses without riders. Blood on the stirrups. A tiny boot print, then a large one. This wasn't an accident. This was a kidnapping. Dusty stamped the ground nervously, his reins clinking. Cole rose slowly, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the canyon ahead. Somewhere out there, 3 missing adults and a child who shouldn't even exist were in trouble. And Cole Maddox was the only man close enough to find them before it was too late. Cole's pulse hammered steadily as he mounted. Dusty again. His senses sharpened to every movement, every sound. The early morning calm had shattered the moment he found those horses. And now the canyon felt different, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful but watchful. As if the land itself were waiting for him to discover something terrible. He nudged Dusty forward, following the faint trail of hoofprints leading into the narrow pass. The tracks were fresh, maybe a day old at most, and they moved in a single file, 3 horses ridden hard and fast. But there was a strange halt in the pattern, a sudden stop where the earth was disturbed, and then the prints turned back toward the direction he came from. That's where the horses must have bolted, Cole realized. Something had frightened them badly enough to send them running miles away, back toward the open plains. But what had happened at that stopping point? He dismounted again, tracing the ground with expert eyes. He found indentations in the sand where people had dismounted 3 sets, matching the number of horses. But the human footprints ended abruptly after those first steps, as if the riders had vanished into thin air. No steps leading away, no drag marks, no scuffle, no struggle, no spilled supplies. Just absence. Cole's jaw flexed. This didn't sit right. If someone wanted to take 3 grown adults, there should have been signs, tracks, blood, dropped belongings. But the only hints of anything unusual were the single small child's boot print and the single large military tread. He continued deeper into the canyon, where the walls narrowed into stone corridors. The pass was quiet except for the distant drip of water and the soft clop of Dusty's hooves. The air grew cooler, shadows pooling against the ground. Cole's gut told him he was heading in the right direction. Danger always lurked in the tighter parts of the canyon. A mile ahead, he found more evidence. A broken canteen lying on its side, its metal dented. A child's ribbon, sky blue, caught in a thorn bush. And farther still, a scuff mark on a flat stone, where something or someone had been dragged across it. Cole picked up the ribbon, turning it between his fingers. It wasn't old, The fabric was soft and clean, except for the corner stained with dirt. He had seen this same ribbon once before, on a little girl passing through Red Brush with her parents 3 weeks earlier. They had been traveling toward the southern settlements. Could this be her? If so, what was she doing with Sam and Maggie? And why would anyone take her? He couldn't slow down now. Cole remounted and urged Dusty into a steady gait, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The canyon began to widen again, forming a basin of red rock and dry brush. At the center, he found more signs. Drag marks? Several of them this time. Shallow but unmistakable. Someone had been moved through here, likely while unconscious or resisting. But still, only the drag marks showed. Not a single adult footprint. It was impossible. 3 grown people didn't simply disappear. Unless Cole's thoughts posit the riders had been taken from horseback before they could even touch the ground. But how? No lasso prints. No scorch marks. No blood beyond what he'd seen earlier. Only one explanation made sense. The kidnapper was experienced. Very experienced. Someone who knew how to hide a trail, how to confuse trackers, how to make people vanish without leaving signs of a struggle. Someone like a cavalry scout turned outlaw. Someone like Elias Ward. Cole had arrested Ward's brother years ago, and Elias had sworn revenge on every lawman who helped put him behind bars. The idea that Ward was involved sent a cold chill through Cole's spine, but it also meant he knew exactly how dangerous the situation had become. He followed the canyon's curve, noticing something else, more small footprints. The same child's? Scattered and uneven, as if she had been walking, maybe stumbling. The thought tightened his chest. A child alone, near a man like Elias Ward. Cole pressed Dusty forward. The family the missing riders had disappeared into this canyon for a reason, and whether they were alive or not, Cole was the only one close enough to uncover the truth. He would not stop until he found them. The farther Cole followed the twisting canyon trail, the more the land stopped feeling like wilderness and started feeling like a message, an urgent one, written in dust and stone by a tiny, desperate hand. Every tracker knew the difference between accidental marks and deliberate ones, and the signs Cole was finding were no accident. Whoever the child was, she wasn't wandering. She was leading. Cole crouched beside a cluster of small boot prints, studying them with the patience of a man who had spent a lifetime reading the earth. Each print was careful, placed in softer patches of dust where it could be seen, not too obvious, but not hidden either. The girl, because the prints were too small to belong to a boy her age, had walked with purpose. More than that, she had left symbols. Cole reached toward a tiny stack of stones arranged beside one footprint. 3 pebbles, one atop 2. A triangle? He nodded slowly. A warning, a sign the child had learned from someone who knew tracking well. Cole remembered a little girl with raven black hair and bright, careful eyes. Leela Dwyer. Sam and Maggie had adopted her after her birth parents were killed in a raid. She had been scared of everything back then: storms, horses, shadows, but she had loved learning, especially learning from Cole. He had shown her how to ride, how to find water, how to notice things other people ignored. He had taught her simple tracking signs, how to show direction with sticks, how to call for help without making a sound. But that was years ago. The child who left these stone symbols wasn't panicked. She was thinking, she was remembering, she was surviving. A swell of emotion rose in Cole's chest, pride mixed with dread. He moved on, scanning for more signs. And there they were, a small scratch in the dirt, forming an arrow, barely visible unless someone knew to look. A single smooth pebble placed on a rough rock, signaling she had been forced to walk on the stone to hide her trail, but didn't want Cole to lose it. A faint smear of pollen, bright yellow, rubbed on a dark boulder as a glowing marker. These weren't random. These were BREAD CRUMBS. Clues left by a child who trusted only one person to follow them. Cole swallowed hard. The canyon's shadows deepened as the walls rose higher, narrowing into a passage where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Birds stopped calling. Dusty's steps echoed hollowly. Cole dismounted and walked beside him. The ground was too delicate now to risk disturbing the signs, and then he found it. The print that made his heart twist. A tiny boot print. Toes spread, heel dug sharply, made by someone stopping suddenly in fear or surprise. Beside it, deeper in the earth, was another print, large, heavy, a man's boot. Its tread was military issue. Cole's eyes hardened. Elias Ward. Cole knelt, tracing the edge of the outlaw's boot print. Elias had a habit of walking off to one side when pulling someone along. It explained why the child's prints appeared. Alonilis's had been placed farther from hers, half hidden in harder soil. The girl had been taken, but she was alive, and she was leaving a trail for him. Cole rose slowly, scanning the canyon ahead. He noticed something else, a small scrap of fabric fluttering from a mesquite branch. Light blue, torn. Another clue. Another message. Another promise that she hadn't given up. Cole took a deep breath, letting the dry desert air fill his lungs. This child, this brave little girl, was fighting with everything she had. Every scavenger, every outlaw, every predator in this canyon respected fear. But courage burned brighter than any campfire at night. And Leela's courage was blazing a trail straight toward her. Cole tightened Dusty's reins. He would follow every sign, Every mark, every whisper of that trail. Because that tiny bootprint hadn't just caught his eye, it had caught his heart, and now he would not rest, not for a second. And two, he found her. The canyon widened into a plateau of jagged stone and sun-baked earth. The kind of place where sound traveled strangely and shadows clung to the ground, like memories that refused to fade. Cole stopped at the ridge, gazing across the land with narrowed eyes. The wind pushed at his hat and carried a faint smell of smoke-cold smoke from a campfire made hours ago. Elias Ward wasn't far. Cole could feel it. He led Dusty along the high ridge trail, moving slow and quiet. The tracks below Lala's tiny footprints mixed with Elias's heavy bootprints continued in a crooked line across the basin, heading toward the southern cliffs. But what rattled Cole most wasn't where the trail went. It was the story the tracks told and their spacing and depth. Elias had been walking fast. The girl had been stumbling to keep up, and the outlaw hadn't slowed for her. Cole felt a hot stab of anger. He had seen men like Elias Ward before, men who believed cruelty was strength, who hurt others not for survival, but because it made them feel powerful. Elias was a specialist in this brand of brutality. His history was filthy, long, and drenched in other people's suffering, and Cole knew every chapter of it. He crouched beside the trail, touching one of Elias's footprints as if it might tell him something more. Elias had once been a cavalry scout during the late Apache campaigns, a man trusted to read the land, track enemies, and strike silently. But after the war, something broke inside him. He started drifting, started stealing, started hurting. When local settlers refused to pay him for protection, Elias escalated, threatening families, burning barns, kidnapping livestock. Eventually he turned to kidnapping people. Cole had been the one assigned to bring him in. He remembered it vividly. Elias's camp smoldering, his brother in chains, and Elias himself screaming that he'd make every lawman on the frontier pay. Cole hadn't flinched then. He didn't flinch now. But anger alone wouldn't save Leela. He forced himself to breathe, to think, to track. He studied the new signs. The hoofprints from the 3 missing riders ended farther back, meaning Sam, Maggie, and Tomas were no longer mounted when Elias took Lila. They had been separated from the child. But the question remained, where were they now? There was still no sign of the adult's footprints, not a single one, and that bothered Cole more than anything else. 3 grown people didn't simply vanish. Even if Elias had ambushed them, there should have been evidence. Blood, broken branches, torn clothing, something. But there was nothing. Nothing except their horses, and the blood on the stirrups. Cole paced slowly, replaying possibilities in his mind. If Elias had attacked the group, he could have forced the adults onto the horses and sent them running to cause confusion. Or he could have taken one hostage and used the others to lure the child away. Except none of that explained why Leela was walking alone. His mind kept circling back to the fact that Leela had left a trail only someone she trusted could read. That meant she believed Nicole was looking for her. Sam and Maggie must have told her to leave clues for the ranger. Then another possibility struck him. What if Lila wasn't the only one who escaped a worse fate? What if Sam and Maggie weren't missing because they had been taken, but because they had managed to escape and were tracking Elias from somewhere above the trail? Barefoot tracking, stone ridges, no footprints. The idea hit him like a jolt. He scanned the ridge walls again, more slowly this time, studying the brush patterns, the broken stones, the faint scrape marks. There along the edge of a steep slope were signs he'd missed before: disturbed gravel and a cracked limb on a creosote bush. Someone had traveled across this ridge recently, someone trying very hard to leave. No trail. Cole's heart thudded faster. If Sam and Maggie were alive, if they were tracking Elias from above, then Lila wasn't just surviving. She was being guided by the hope that her parents were near. Cole tightened his jaw. The canyon ahead narrowed into a place locals called the Throat of Stone, a winding corridor of cliffs known for ambushes. If Elias was heading there, he was planning something. Cole mounted Dusty again, the decision already made. He would follow the trail. He would find the truth. And he would bring Lila home no matter who stood in his way. The sun had begun to sink behind the jagged peaks when Cole reached the mouth of a narrow passage known across the frontier as the Canyon of Echoes. Locals said a whisper spoken here could sound like a shout, and a shout could vanish into the stone like it had never existed. It was a place where sound lied, and danger hid in its folds. Cole dismounted Dusty, running a hand along the horse's neck to calm him. The animal was uneasy, ears flicking, muscles twitching, nostrils flared. Dusty had carried Cole through gunfights, storms, and blizzards, and he rarely spooked. If Dusty was nervous, something was very wrong. Cole stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching softly on gravel. The canyon twisted sharply, bending into a curve that blocked the fading light. Shadows stretched across the ground like long-reaching fingers. The air cooled suddenly, wrapping around him like a warning, and then barely audible came the sound. A sob, small, trembling. A child's sob. Cole froze. It echoed strangely against the canyon walls, stretching and folding as if the stone were trying to hide its source. But Cole knew that cry. He had heard Lila cry before when she first came to the Dwyer's ranch, lost and afraid. The sound punched straight through his chest. She was close, alive, and terrified. Cole extinguished the lantern strapped to his saddle. Light would give him away. He pressed his back against the canyon wall, moving silently along its uneven surface, his breath shallow and controlled. His fingers brushed the handle of his revolver, but he didn't draw it yet. He needed to see the situation before he acted. The canyon widened after the bend, spilling into a small hollow lit by a flickering campfire. Cole stopped just before the entrance, staying low. He peered around the rock outcropping, and saw him, Elias Ward. The outlaw stood near the fire, pacing like a caged wolf. His hat was thrown aside, his hair wild and greasy. A hunting knife glinted at his hip. His boots, same ones that left the heavy prints scraped the dirt with each angry step. But Cole's eyes went past Elias, immediately to the figure tied to a mesquite trunk near the fire. Lila. Her tiny wrists were bound with rope, her boots dusty, her cheeks streaked with tears, but she was alive. Cole's chest loosened with a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. She looked weak, exhausted, but not defeated. Even tied up, her eyes were hard, searching, calculating, hoping. Cole almost stepped out then, almost walked straight into the firelight, but his instinct, honed over years of chasing dangerous men across unforgiving land, stopped him. He scanned the camp, and that's when he saw them. 2 shovels, and beside them, 2 mounds of fresh dirt. Cole's stomach tightened. The firelight flickered across the mounds, casting grotesque shadows. The shapes were long enough for bot. The shovels were still dirty. The earth was recently disturbed. A spike of dread drove into him. Was he too late? Were Sam and Maggie buried beneath that dirt? His mind raced, trying to understand. The horses had been found. The blood, the disappearance, the lack of footprints. Could Elias have killed the parents and buried them here before taking the girl? The thought twisted inside him like wire. But he forced himself to breathe, to think. There were no drag marks leading to the mounds. No blood-soaked soil. No signs of a struggle in the immediate area. If Elias had committed murder, he hadn't done it here. This didn't feel right. Something was off. Cole edged around the canyon's edge, leaning as close as he dared to try and hear what Elias was muttering. His voice carried strangely, sometimes loud as thunder, sometimes faint as a whisper. Should have been easy. Damn ridge. I'll find them. Girl knows something. Cole's eyes narrowed. Them. Elias was looking for someone. Someone who wasn't Lila. Cold realization crept over Cole's spine. Sam and Maggie might not be dead. They might be out there live tracking Elias. They might be hiding close enough to watch, waiting for a moment to strike. The mounds weren't graves. They were something else entirely. Before Cole could piece it together fully, a small stone skittered across the ground near Lila's feet. She flinched and her eyes darted upward, toward the ridge above. Cole followed her gaze slowly, and saw movement in the shadows. A silhouette, then another. 2 figures crouched silently on the ridge edge, watching Elias, waiting for the right moment. Sam and Maggie Dwyer, alive, and ready. Cole felt his pulse steady. The game wasn't over, it was just beginning. Cole had seen desperate people before, caught in storms, outlaws cornered by fear, soldiers pushed past Sanya, but nothing compared to the silent intensity he witnessed on that ridge. Sam and Maggie Dwyer crouched low, half hidden by the jagged rock formations, their eyes locked on Elias Ward like wolves waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They were bruised, dusty, and exhausted but alive. Relief washed through Cole so strongly he almost sank to his knees. But relief was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. Not when Lila was tied to a tree just 30 yards away. Not when Elias Ward was pacing with a knife at his hip and rage boiling through his every movement. Cole stayed hidden. Thinking fast, Sam held a small hunting knife, its edge reflecting the firelight. Maggie gripped a broken rifle, its barrel cracked, probably smashed during their struggle to escape Elias's ambush. They looked like people who had been through hell, but their eyes told a different story. Determination, rage, love. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for their daughter. Cole moved imperceptibly closer until he was just beneath the slope where the Dwyers were hiding. He let a fingertip scrape the rock lightly. A soft click sound, a signal only someone trained or desperate enough to listen closely would recognize. Sam's head snapped toward the sound. His eyes widened with recognition. Cole made no movement, but the message was clear. I'm here. I'm with you. Don't move yet. Sam squeezed Maggie's hand. She nodded, swallowing hard, steadying her breath. Down by the fire, Elias kept pacing, muttering to himself, occasionally kicking at the dirt in frustration. His voice cracked as the canyon wall stretched and twisted his words. She saw them, knows where they ran. Little brat, I'll make her talk. Cole's jaw clenched. He forced himself to assess the ground. The canyon's shape favored the one in the center. The firelight halo around Elias meant he would see any movement too close. But the shadows on the right created a blind spot. A watcher with experience could slip in unnoticed. And Cole had plenty. He needed a plan, something simple, silent, and fast. He risked another look at Lila. Her small face was streaked with tears. But when Cole met her gaze from the shadows, something remarkable happened. Her fear didn't worsen. It softened. She recognized him, eventide, exhausted, and terrified. She held on to that tiny flicker of hope. Cole lifted 2 fingers to his temple, a sign he'd used with her while teaching her tracking years ago. It meant, stay strong. Help is coming. She blinked once slowly in response. Then she glanced again toward her parents' hiding spot. Then at Elias. Then back to Cole. Even tied to a tree. She was thinking, observing, calculating. Just like he had taught her. Cole almost smiled. He positioned himself a little to the side, ensuring Elias wouldn't see him unless the outlaw stepped directly into the shadows. Then he signaled to Sam with a subtle movement, 3 fingers tapping the stone. 3 steps, 3 targets, 3 actions. Sam understood immediately. Maggie steadied herself, shifting slightly to improve her angle. She wasn't armed well enough to fire, but she could distract. And distractions, when timed perfectly, could mean survival. Below, Elias suddenly stopped pacing. He froze, sniffing the air like an animal sensing a shift in the wind. Then he walked toward Lila. Cole tensed. Sam tensed. Maggie gripped the rifle so tightly her knuckles turned white. Elias leaned down, his shadow falling over the trembling girl. "You're gonna tell me where your folks went," he hissed. "Or I'm gonna—" A pebble rolled down the ridge. Elias spun around instantly. Maggie had shifted too fast. Her foot had dislodged a stone. Elias grabbed his rifle. "Who's up there?" Cole felt his throat tighten. This wasn't the plan, not yet. Elias stepped closer to the ridge, turning his back on Lila. Cole acted. He grabbed a fist-sized stone and hurled it into the darkness on the opposite side of the canyon. It hit the wall with a hard crack, splitting the echo across the stone. Elias jerked toward the noise, confused. Rifle raised. Sam realized the window was opening. Cole mouthed one silent word toward him. "Now." Sam nodded once. The plan unspoken but shared was about to begin. The night was at its darkest when Ranger Elias Boone finally reached the Sky Creek Gang's hideout. From the ridge above, he could see their camp spread across a narrow canyon floor, a crooked ring of fires, lean-tos made of stolen canvas, and shadows moving restlessly like wolves waiting for dawn. The wind carried the smell of gun oil, horses, and fear. It was the kind of place men entered only once if they weren't prepared. Elias crouched low behind a cluster of boulders, studying the layout. There were fewer men than he expected, maybe a dozen left. Some limped, some argued, some paced with rifles slung over their shoulders. They were uneasy. Someone had scared them badly. Good, he thought. Let them be uneasy. But his eyes searched for one thing only, the small figure of the missing child. He found nothing. No crying, no movement, no woman caring for a little girl. A knot formed in his stomach. If she wasn't here, then she had escaped. Or the gang had doubled back and hidden her elsewhere. Then he saw it, near the center fire. Tied to a post and guarded by 2 men, was something wrapped in a dark blanket. Too small for a grown person. Too still. Elias's breath caught. He couldn't wait any longer. He slung his rifle across his back, drew his revolver, and inched down the slope. The moon slipped behind clouds, giving him precious shadows. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. He moved like a ghost, weaving through the rocks. At the edge of the camp, he paused behind a wagon wheel and listened. "Shoulda left the kid behind," one outlaw muttered, spit hitting the dirt. "She ain't worth the trouble," the other snapped. "Boss said she's worth more alive than dead. Some buyer out east wants Navajo blood for their damn shows." Elias felt something inside him ignite, hot and cold at the same time. A show? A traveling exhibit? They wanted to sell her. He tightened his jaw. No man deserved mercy after saying words like that. A twig snapped behind him. Elias turned, gun raised only to freeze. A familiar silhouette stepped out from the darkness, tall in a ranger coat with a torn sleeve, a silver badge glinting faintly, a scar cutting across the cheek, but ghost he never expected to see again. Marcus Hale, his former partner, alive. "Easy, Boone," Hale whispered, hands raised. "If you fire, they'll kill her." Elias' mind spun. Anger, disbelief, relief, confusion, they crashed through him like a stampede. "You," Elias growled. "You're with them." Hale shook his head sharply. "No, I've been inside them, trying to break them apart from the inside. They think I switched sides. Let them think it. It keeps the kid alive." Elias didn't lower his gun. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to look at me the way you used to," Hale said quietly, "and see the truth. I cut her loose last night. I'm the reason she ran. I left a trail only you would recognize." Elias hesitated, a half-second, but Hale saw it. "There's no time," Hale whispered. "They plan to move the girl before sunrise. If we don't act now—" A shout tore through the camp. "There he is!" Hale brought someone, rifles cocked. Men scrambled for cover. Hale cursed. "We fight our way to her. No choice now." The 2 men, once sworn brothers, turned back, revolvers drawn. Gunfire erupted like thunder, snapping the canyon awake. Elias shot the first man clean through the shoulder, sending him tumbling into the firelight. Hale dropped another before the outlaw could aim. Sparks flew. Horses screamed. Bullets whined through the air like angry hornets. Through the chaos, Elias sprinted toward the bundle tied to the post. A bullet grazed his arm. Another kicked up dust at his feet, but he kept going. He cut the rope, yanked the blanket free, and found nothing but stones wrapped inside a decoy. A trap. His heart lurched. That meant the girl was out there alone. And the night, was running out. Dawn's first light stretched across Red Brush Canyon, spilling soft gold onto the jagged cliffs and dry sagebrush. Ranger Cole Maddox had spent the night tracking every bootprint, pebble, and subtle mark left in the dust, and now, at last, he reached the clearing where the nightmare had begun. The 3 horses, found riderless days before, had led him to this point. And the tiny bootprint, the first clue of all, had never left his mind. It had guided him, whispered to him, and now it would reveal the truth. Ahead, the outlaw Elias Ward stood near a smoldering campfire, pacing with fury. His hands were bloody, his hat askew, his eyes wild with the certainty that he had won. But Cole could see the fear behind the rage, the knowledge that he was being hunted now. Beside a gnarled mesquite tree, tied roughly with rope, was the small figure of Lila Dwyer. The child's face was streaked with dirt and tears, but she held herself upright, her gaze sharp, scanning the canyon edges for hope. Cole crouched low behind a boulder, studying the scene. He noticed subtle movement along the ridge, the faint outlines of Sam and Maggie Dwyer, bruised but alive, strategically positioned to help. It was a coordinated trap, laid out with the precision of desperation and love. The child's tiny bootprint had been a signal all along a breadcrumb trail, leading to this moment where courage, cunning, and timing could finally converge. Taking a deep breath, Cole signaled silently to the dweller. Sam nodded, gripping the small hunting knife he had kept hidden. Maggie adjusted her position, rifle ready, though she knew she had to be careful not to fire prematurely. Every second mattered. Elias Ward had no idea they were so well prepared. He believed Lila alone, terrified, was his advantage. He was wrong. Cole moved forward, keeping low, his revolver drawn. His eyes caught Lila's, and she understood without words. The lessons he had taught her years before, how to read the terrain, leave subtle signs, and stay calm under threat, now made the difference between life and death. She shifted slightly, exposing a clue, a tiny scuff on her boot. A carved arrow in the sole, the symbol her father had left before she ever saw the canyon. It was proof she had survived by thinking, by guiding him, by trusting in the one person who would follow the trail no matter what. Then came the moment of action. Cole's voice was a whisper, but its authority carried. Now. Simultaneously, the Dwyers struck. Sam leaped down from the ridge, knocking Elias off balance. Maggie fired a warning shot, sending the remaining outlaws scrambling for cover. Cole moved like a shadow, circling, keeping Elias in sight, while ensuring Lila was protected. The outlaw fought, knife swinging, but the combined force of a trained ranger, a determined couple, and a clever child proved too much. Within minutes, Elias Ward was disarmed, restrained, and defeated. Breathing heavily, Cole cut the ropes binding Lila. She ran into his arms, trembling, exhausted, but safe. Her parents followed, enveloping her in a tight embrace, tears streaking their faces. The nightmare was over. The 3 missing adults were alive. The child whose tiny bootprint had set this chain of events into motion had survived. Smarter and braver than anyone had expected. As the sun climbed higher, the canyon was quiet once again, the echo of the past few days fading. Cole looked down at Lila, smiling faintly. "You did well," he said. "Bravery, like yours, it doesn't come often." She looked up at him, eyes wide, and whispered, "I just wanted to make sure you'd find me." Cole chuckled softly, shaking his head in awe. The tiny bootprint, the first, seemingly insignificant mark, had been a lifeline, a map, and a signal of hope. It had guided him through danger, led him to allies he didn't even know were in play, and ultimately revealed the truth. Courage, no matter how small, could shape the fate of the entire canyon. The Dwyers reunited, mounted their horses. Cole stayed behind, watching them ride off the canyon, now bathed in morning light. The trail was gone, but the lesson remained. The tiniest footprints could leave the biggest impact. And in Red Brush Canyon, no act of bravery, no matter how small, was ever wasted.